Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Good afternoon, members, officers, and any members of the public viewing the stream. Welcome to this meeting of the Climate and Environment Advisory Committee. My name is Councillor Pippa Halings, and I'm the chair of the committee. My vice chairs are Councillors Martin Khan and Jeff Harvey, and I will introduce other attendees when I invite them to speak. Those in the chamber are reminded that the meeting is being live streamed, and may I ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their camera and microphone remain off unless they're addressing the committee. For those of us present in the room, please ensure your microphone is close to you and speak clearly when addressing the room. I think we can move straight into the order of the day, which will be apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you very much, Chair. No apologies for absence have been received by DEM Services, but I do note that Councillor Toomey Hawkins is joining us online today.
Thank you, and hello, Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins. Nice to have you with us. Wonderful. And declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Thank you. No. And then we'll move to minutes of the previous meeting. So if we go to minutes of the previous meeting, does anybody have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting? And thank you, as always, for those minutes. No? Good, skipping through this is excellent. So, and now we'll move to the items of the day. And rather strange meeting this time, because actually what we've got are 3 items on the agenda and they're all oral updates. So rather than sort of lots of the report material that we have as written report material, but we thought it was really important to be able to get this kind of update, even though it's not a state in which it can be written yet, but it's still important to know what's happening. So that's why we've got the 3 oral updates that are happening. So the first one is the greening of South Cams Hall, and we've been asking, let us know what's happening. Are we on track? We've seen lots of things happening outside, so it would be just really good to have that. And can I ask Sean Missin, who I understand is joining us online, to present this update, Sean?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Misson. I'm the procurement manager for South Cambridgeshire District Council, and I'm giving you an update of the greening programme. There were some challenges that we faced, and we're obviously trying to get the project back on track to make sure that all of these elements are delivered. So just to explain, we've appointed a technical project manager, an employer's agent advisor, and building service technical advisor to help make sure that we can deliver each of these outstanding items. Progress has been made by the introduction of some project management systems and procedures and reporting to ensure that these issues are addressed at the earliest opportunity, and also factor some elements which are outstanding into the completion of the work. As well as that, we've had to put in some special systems to make sure that we're asking technical questions. It's effectively a request for information system so that we can track those technical questions and the responses to them so that they can help aid a speedy response and also make sure that we can finish this project as soon as possible. So getting on to each of the elements of the works, the carport and the PVs, we had to replace some vandalised solar panels in the carport. We've also addressed some snagging that occurred in the carport with some of the pedestrian barriers and things. And we've also comprehensively tested the electrical vehicle chargers, and we're pleased to say that they're now fully operational and working. The operation and maintenance documents are now being reviewed so that we can obviously get this item closed off and formally handed over. We're getting on to the chiller switch. So one of the issues that we've got is that the way that the wiring has been configured to do with the load that we have in the plant room, we've got a chiller switch which shares a port with the solar carport. So in order to correct this, we're doing some design rectification, mechanical and electrical works so that we can enable the chiller and solar carports to operate concurrently. Further design work is therefore being undertaken by Boyds before approval can then be granted to proceed, and then we can get that item finished and closed off.
Sure.
Coming
do you
on
want
to
to
the
just
yeah.
sure just sorry to interrupt, but do you want to just explain what the chiller switch is?
Yes, of course. So we have some chiller equipment which chills the building in the summer, and we also Because of the configuration within the plant room, unfortunately, the design of the installation has meant that the um, carport and the chiller has effectively shared the same electrical switch. So the problem is that if you run both of them concurrently, it would have a problem and the building couldn't cope and would overload. So one or the other would trip out in effect. So in order to put this right, what we're having to do is do some mechanical and electrical works to make sure that they sit on separate switches in effect. Okay. And do you want me to carry on, Chair?
Sorry, yes, no, thank you. That was very clear. Thank you.
Okay, so going on to the heating system, this has been reviewed by our technical team with Boygs in detail, and we've identified some works that we needed to carry out to the trench heating in the building and also the main air handling unit, which is considered to be 01. And just to explain this is that when Boygs put in their greening solution, what they've done is they've connected to our older components and systems. Now, the problem is that some of these are as old as 20 years old. So effectively, what we've done is we've done a review of those systems, and we found that some of them needed some remedial works to bring them up to specification so that they perform adequately. So you will have heard some noise today, I think, in South Cambridge Hall, but that's the air handling unit which is being repaired. We've also, during December, we made some adjustments to some valves and some low temperature hot water system, and also put the air handling unit into winter mode. And some other minor adjustments, which have meant that the building, rather than feeling cold, I think you'll agree, is actually feeling quite good at the moment. So it's stabilised the temperatures, and it's made sure that if you come and work in the office, it's quite a pleasant environment. But we're hoping to actually get all of those things repaired and fixed, and then obviously we can move towards getting the ground source heat pumps so that they're operating correctly and as designed, and then hopefully that will mean that the heating system will be operating as it is intended and it is designed. When we're going on to the other energy conversion measures, conservation measures, sorry, the technical design workshops are taking place sort of weekly between our technical team and Boygs for each of those individual ones. And what we're doing in those energy workshops is trying to understand what are the outstanding issues, if there are any technical problems that need to be resolved, and then putting in a plan to resolve those issues, bringing in subcontractors and whatever to help fix those problems, and then obviously to make sure that we can then hand each of those items over. The focus on our team has been in the last few weeks is purely around the heating and the air handling units, but we're pleased to say that we're making good progress with that. So we think that's getting back on track. And just to explain that the chiller replacement works are also being coordinated with the other works that are taking place to make sure that there's no problems or other delays. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sean. So I'll open up to any questions on that detail, which is about sort of what's happened and why there have been some bumps in the road in a way in terms of the timing of this, but it sounds like you're identified the problems and are moving on. But have we got any questions, members? I've got two. Councillor Martin Khan.
Well, simply to ask when the building will be ready and operational without works going place. I mean, that's obviously a concern.
Yes, thank you for that. To be honest, what I think is we're having to identify all the problems. So whilst we've identified many of the problems, what I can't tell you is I can't give you a final date of this is the date when all of those problems will be fixed and you'll have no more greening works within the building. I'm afraid I can't give you that today. And to be honest, I think what it needs, we need more work to make sure that we've identified all of the individual issues. We've actually sequenced them, and there's some dependencies as well. So there's 11 different tranches of works that are happening, and there's some dependencies between them, and you have to do things in certain sequences, and you have to make sure that if you're doing one set of things, if anything has a dependence, then certain other works has to take place at that time as well. So if you can appreciate, I can't give you a particular date when those particular works will be finished, but what I can tell you is that we're working towards being able to provide a definitive date of when that is, and also to make sure that those works are actually completed satisfactorily and correctly, so that rather than giving abstract dates or anything, we can be assured that those works, when we actually do give proper dates for completion, that those completions are met, and in fact those works are properly complete, and that those are handed over formally.
And in that sense, these additional works that have become necessary, what's the liability? I mean, originally there was presumably a survey and these weren't picked up. How is the management financing going? Is this part of a energy service contract so that the contractor is liable, or is this something that we have to pay? Who is liable for all this additional work?
Yeah, I mean, so for anything that the contractor, I'll give you an example. So for example, on the EVs, we've had some EV chargers that have been faulty. That's been the responsibility of the contractor to pick up and actually fix and repair. For the things like the air handling unit, that is our responsibility. It's our piece of equipment. It was always our, it's been in our service for 20 years. And unfortunately, it's just at the stage of life where it did need some remedial work. So we would have to repair that at our charge. So I think there's different tranches amongst the 11 tranches, and the different elements of those tranches where liability may lie, and some of them unfortunately are the council, and some of them are the contractor or the contractor subcontractor.
Thank you.
Councillor Jeff Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, I was interested to hear about the air handling unit because right back at the start of this project, maybe about 2018, I suppose, I understood that replacing the motors, for example, replacing sort of single-speed three-phase motors with modern inverter-driven variable speed motors, and that was part of the area or scope for making energy savings. So I just wondered, did that sort of drop out of the project at some point?
I'm really sorry. I've only sort of taken over the project since October to try to help them to resolve the issues and to actually bring it to a successful close. So I'm not clear about anything, any of the design characteristics from the original phase of the project. Did you want me to take a question back about that?
Yes, thanks. That would be interesting. Just to know whether there are further, if we did revisit this and come back with a phase 2 of further improvements, maybe that would be one we could look at, especially if there's a rationale for, because when things get to a certain age, it's almost better to replace with something new rather than having to come back with repeated maintenance interventions. Yeah, so that would be useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No other question, Mums. I just have one. When you're talking about the sort of the pathway that you're looking with the different critical dependencies, so the question would be, are there any sort of barriers or obstacles that that you'd like to highlight for in terms of being able to deal with those, that you need either member support for, cabinet support for, or whatever, or within the update you feel that now that you've identified the pathways and the critical dependencies, it's just getting on and doing that?
Yes, I think it's the complexities of dealing with 11 different tranches of work, Chair, with the technical nature of the work, with the subcontractors that have been employed. There's a number of subcontractors that are working, and it's making sure that you can sequence them in the correct sequence at the correct times when you need them. And that's the reality of where we are, and that's why I can't give you a definitive date. But that's the may it's not really a barrier, but that's the issue that I can see that is at hand, and it's really down to us to actually manage that with the technical team. But thank you.
No, thank you. And it's good that obviously it's been identified and you've been brought on to make sure that there's somebody, with a technical manager as well who can be managing those work streams. Okay, thank you very much. And so, members of the committee, we're invited to note that update. So I think it's okay to do that. Good. Thank you very much. If we move to the next agenda item, which are updates to the Zero Carbon Community Grant Guidance for applicants. And we know that this is a very, very successful and important part of our whole approach to our zero carbon targets and our zero carbon action plan, which is about including and working with local communities and parishes. So it's part of the granting, and the grant guidance for this is a key part of this. So Orla, I think you're with us to present this update.
Yes, thanks very much. So yeah, very excitingly, we're coming up for the 6th round of applications this April for the Zero Carbon Communities Grant. So in preparation, we've been reviewing the criteria and guidance, which is currently available on the website and is the kind of master document that people use as they apply. So these are more, I'd say, clarifications to the guidance necessarily than changes. And we're sort of proposing that the grant themes and objectives will remain the same. So projects will once again be invited under those two themes, either projects that reduce carbon emissions or lock up carbon, or projects that engage the community around climate change and like promote behaviour change. So yeah, these kind of proposed clarifications are based on suggestions that were made to us by the Grants Advisory Committee and the lead cabinet member for resources in, I believe it was June or July last year when we brought the applications to them, and comments made by the officer panels when we were reviewing the project applications. So yeah, we hope these changes would help ensure we receive strong applications that perform well under the grant criteria and help us see clear and measurable outcomes and kind of grade them against those. So firstly, with regards to applications for nature projects, in the most recent round we did receive some applications for nature projects, but those were all received under the community engagement theme. And none of those were funded because the applications did not adequately demonstrate that those projects would engage people on climate issues or promote behaviour change. Although they sort of outlined really valuable plans to support nature recovery, because they'd submitted under that community engagement theme, we're sort of compelled to, assess that as the sort of one of the principal aims of the project, and the community engagement was typically a sort of secondary aim with practical measures to support nature as the principal aim. So yeah, we basically propose that not to exclude nature projects at all. We hope to continue to welcome them to the grant, but basically just refine the guidance to suggest that if you're a pure nature project, then you might want to look at other more suitable funding sources, potentially like the Community Chest, Biodiversity Pot, and the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough Fund for Nature that we were discussing in this morning's workshop, and that the new guidance will need to emphasise that projects should define themselves principally for their community engagement benefits, alongside their nature work, or should advertise their carbon reduction benefits clearly if they're applying under that category. So just a reminder to nature projects to centre their kind of fulfilment of the theme, because we feel that's why none were funded last time, and we do want to see them funded still. Secondly, a clarification around solar PV projects. So when last year's applications were reviewed by the Grants Advisory Committee, members commented on variations in costs between solar PV projects that seemed to be delivering similar outcomes. Some of that was to do with part funding and match funding contributions, but there was some concern about just differing quotes. So we're going to ask sort of more formally, it's always been recommended, but we're going to request the proposed changes request that we get them to give a minimum of 3 quotes just to ensure more value for money, particularly on solar PV projects where we've noticed there's that disparity. And then lastly, we propose to make the guidance more prescriptive when projects submitted under the carbon emissions theme are calculated their avoided emissions or projected avoided emissions. So the current application guidance and criteria provides a recommended methodology for calculating avoided CO2 emissions. However, applicants don't always use this methodology in the portion of the e-form that asks them to give these estimates, which makes it quite difficult to compare them like for like. And we do try to find a figure for each project for the sort of kilograms of avoided CO2 emissions for every pound of funding requested. So yeah, we just would like to tighten up the phrasing on the e-form so that they're required to use that methodology unless they can sort of very clearly evidence another method of calculation. Which will just help us compare those figures more like for like and not have to kind of make leaps of imagination ourselves to kind of try and find an estimate that we can then use like for like. So yeah, those are the three proposed clarifications. And I'm really interested to hear if you think those are sensible or we propose additional changes or alternative changes. So yeah, thanks very much.
Members? Yes, Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Chair. With respect to community engagement in projects, we touched on this in the workshop earlier. Is there more we can do to help the applicants along the road of just demonstrating community engagement? Examples may be templates, that kind of thing. Don't have a concrete solution, but maybe that's something you can think about.
No, we'll definitely bear that in mind. We currently advise them to think about, try and find a number for people directly and then sort of who will be not directly exposed, but maybe not directly influenced, but exposed to the project generally. So we can build that into our sort of marketing of the grant, and I guess also in the workshop that we run, and we invite applicants to sort of discuss the nuts and bolts of the application. So yeah, thank you very much.
Good, and just to follow on, I think that's a good, if there's a link to some of our newsletters where it talks about them, but we've got examples of how they've done that community engagement. I think that's what people want to do. Oh, how did you do it? If that won the money, how did you do it? Was it a newsletter? Was it a, group meeting? Was it getting them involved in the activity? And I found that as well, people going, what do we actually do to make sure that it is that piece? But so I think it's the links to the activities, and as you say, in the workshop itself, but also people like to be able to read some examples of what's happened. Thanks, Pete. Councillor Jeff Harvey.
Yes, I'm just wondering, there's this sort of happy overlap between the objectives of, increasing our biodiversity and carbon capture, and therefore if it's with the zero carbon title to this. We were talking this morning about some of the most active groups are around river ecology. I just wondered if there's a way that we could sort of sneak that in, because it's difficult to sort of really say, well, improving river ecology is sort of reducing carbon emissions or sequestering carbon, but I don't know, I just wonder what we think about that. Or maybe we need to perhaps, do some fishing, if you will allow, and direct those groups to alternate sources of funding.
I can come back on that. I think that's definitely something which, when we're sharing examples of sort of what could be funded and things like that, if you were to have a sort of river restoration project or something like that, where you're really engaging communities, and as well as that sort of sole project, which has a really good sort of ecological value, you are demonstrating that project sort of engages people and sort of takes on volunteers and things, and that's quite a good example of sort of how that could fit well into that community engagement type of project. And so it's something which we can use as sort of when we're marketing the grants or sharing it with communities, we can highlight that as a route for them.
And Councillor Cherian then. So, Brennan, can I just ask Councillor Brian Mills for his question while we're sorting out your audio? Yeah. I think it'll be a race now between which of you can sort it first.
There we go. Oh, a little bit. Stand back. Just picking up on this proselytisation programme. There we go. How do we get more people in our community to join in? We saw the success of our COP conference to some of the presentations, and particularly, for example, the electric vehicle charging point, because there's been a barrier to people approaching that because there's so much unknown information. And one of the things that I suggested that we might consider is doing a video from Steeple Morden to take us through that reflects his talk, so that he doesn't have to do that to individual parishes, but that would become an online resource. So if we could do that, I think that would be really useful. Thank you.
Councillor Cherry. Yeah.
Amen. We discussed about the community projects. My question is that can this grant be extended to the school education projects as well? I proposed a eco festival in Camborne Village College earlier, and they had a successful eco festival just to bring the ideas from the generation next, also that all children can come up what to do with the climate conditions. They ran it in 2022, but they couldn't run it last year because they didn't have any funding. So can this grant be extended to the school education as well?
So, would that fall under the community engagement? You know, and in a way, what would be the guidance for that kind of eco festival, whether it's a school or a community eco festival? Is that something that could be done?
Yeah, that is definitely something which would be fundable under that the community engagement category. As to whether I'd have to come back to you on whether schools can apply, I would need to just double check on the criteria. But if not a school, if a community could apply for that kind of project. But
So we have had a case law in this, in that we've had, I think it was Melbourne School college students who applied in one of the very early grants. So I do think there has been precedent in that one. But as I understand the answer is, Councillor Vice Chair, the grant is saying there's two categories you go under, with either it's purely sort of the carbon side of this, or this is a community engagement around the eco side, either the nature or the carbon or both. So if it's purely about how you get people involved in that and the ideas around it, which is what you're saying, then yes, it definitely comes in. The who applies for it, how, you'll just get some confirmation on that. But I think we have had a precedent where the school has come through.
Yeah, if you can confirm me the procedure, like we can also apply on behalf of because we are the registered charity from Camborne. If we apply to help the local school, then we can apply on behalf of them, and then the local school can run their eco festival for the next year.
Exactly. So it's about partnership. So, and actually you as councillor now can do that. So all of that information is already available online for the grants that are upcoming. So you can find that and point that to others in the community or your charity or whatever. But all we're doing now is just working out the questions and the guidance for that next round. But basically the answer is yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And rather than others telling them, you can, because that's, as a councillor, as local councillors, we signpost this to everybody. I think that all sounds really sensible kind of clarifications in the guidance. And I think it does point to where, some communities have sort of wondered about how they do that, or the parish councils have wondered, about those questions. So thanks very much. And also, if you're unlocking things where people have applied and then been frustrated and you can see why, it's helping them to navigate it. So that all sounds very good. So we're invited to note that update, members? Yeah, good. Thank you very much. And we're going on now to another way in which we're helping communities to act on doubling nature and biodiversity, and this is the Free Trees programme. So, thank you very much. Orla, I think you're also presenting this update.
Yeah, that's me again. So yeah, just a few weeks ago, the Six Free Trees scheme for 2023 into 2024 closed, and 146 trees have been delivered or are due to be delivered, depending on their ordering time, to parishes across South Cambridgeshire. So, as with previous years, the parish councils were given the option between 6 smaller trees or 1 larger potted tree. We promoted the scheme across social media. We emailed parish councils directly and sent out a press release. 45 parish councils took up the offer of the free trees, and feedback from parish councils that didn't participate this year cited issues finding a space for and then maintaining upkeep and watering of the trees, and also that they just received quite a lot of trees from other sources that year, like the Coronation Tree Fund. I think a few parish councils took advantage of. There were some new parishes who'd never accessed the scheme before who signed up this year, including Teversham, Great Abington, Great and Little Everston and Bartlow. So yeah, 45 parish councils took up the offer this year, a slight reduction on last year, which was 49, but there was a really good spread geographically across the district, with particularly good uptake in the southwest of the district. And we've asked parish councils, as usual, as part of their sort of agreement, to provide us with photos of planting and of the trees in situ. So we've got a press release planned and some very positive posts across our socials, an update in our newsletter, and an update to the website. So we'll be sharing the successes of the scheme again this year. But yeah.
Good, thank you. Members, any health lecture?
Does it have a special corner for the plantation, and will it be written that district council promoted or district council donated, something like that?
Is there any branding on the trees?
Yeah, we don't request any formally, although some parish councils opt to put plaques and then credit us on the plaque, but we don't request that they do that or provide those materials at the minute.
I mean, if it's sort of coming up to 150 trees around, I mean, they're all sort of dotted around, but whereas Coronation for woodland and the WI woodlands are they're like, wow, this is a new woodland, and they're very significant once they grow. But maybe some creative thinking around it, and even just a little, here's a map of where they are. You know, you can find them around, but given their sort of interview, it's probably quite a bit much to say, and now label them as so, but I think some recognition of a nice map of where they all are and things like that, it's a nice idea, Councillor Peter Sanford.
Thank you, Chair. Have we been following up with the parish councils and other lucky recipients as to whether the trees have survived? I know we get pictures when they're first planted, but how many have made their second birthdays?
Yeah, we have some anecdotal feedback. Parish councils like to keep us updated on the survival of the trees, but I think we have done surveys previously.
So better than the A14 trees that were planted then? Are we, just as long as we're better than, that rate?
Yeah, to add to that, we have received some, as Orla's mentioned, some nice anecdotal feedback, and also reviews on trees, and it's nice to see sort of communities really taking on responsibility of those trees and sort of really and watering them, and sort of and you see sort of people maybe sort of not involved with the sort of parish councils, but parish councils will inform us that residents have sort of nearby residents have taken on the watering of those trees, so that's sort of quite nice to see that that ownership of them.
Good. Well, thank you very much. That's really. Oh, Councillor Dr. Martin.
One of the, I mean, it's a very nice project. One of the constraints will be the availability of land to plant owned by the parish councils. How much of a constraint has that proved to be, and how much more could could be provided? Are there many parish councils with a lot of land, or are they all rather restricted to land which is perhaps already well wooded? I just wonder what the context is.
Well, I think from what we hear from the parish councils that are participating in the scheme, most of them have found space. I don't really have an indication as to how much there is remaining, how many more trees can be planted there. But I do know that some parish councils are opting to, for instance, we had our estates team give permission for a couple of them to be put on our own housing land as well, or on sort of verges around the housing land. So I don't know if necessarily that's due to a lack of space or just they're finding places where they think the trees would be well situated, but I can't really comment on that really, sorry.
Councillor Brown-Mills?
Yeah, thank you. Interesting point about the verges, because we've also had correspondence at my parish council with the county council. So depending on which side of the footpath your verge is, depends really who you need to seek permission from. So we've tried to establish a good means of communication with the county to get that permission, to make it easier to find. And so roads that previously had few or no trees are slowly building up on their verges to create avenues in our housing units. So there we go.
That's really interesting, but how coordination, can actually enhance things. That's really interesting. And good cautionary tale. I think that's really important, isn't it? Very, very good. There was a request from somebody, and it's about that council land. Are we supportive of a parish council or a local initiative planting on district council land and then doing the early maintenance, but then handing it back once it's doesn't need so much maintenance? So I've had that from a parish council that was considering, doing that for the council and with the council. Somebody sort of later in life, and they just think this is what they would like the community to do. It's a piece of district council land that everybody enjoys. So therefore, it would just be, would the district council, I suppose, then be willing to take on a bit of land that has trees on it that have been planted, that would need some kind of maintenance later on, or liability?
Yeah, it's something which we can look into, and we could discuss with colleagues in housing as well who manage some of that land. So yeah, it's something we can take away and look into, but that's useful feedback, and thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. We move on to the final agenda item, and we note your updates, so thank you very much. We're looking forward to the press release and the socials, and we'll all share those and make sure they get wide recognition. So this is about the forward plan for our committee meetings. Oh, Councillor Dr. Batcha. I have a question on the next one? Yes, good. So first of all, if I could ask Rebecca Wood, if you could give us that update, please.
Morning, Elise. Hi, everyone. Sorry. Yes, upcoming plan for the next committee. We've got a follow-on on the joint air quality strategy from our colleagues in that team. which will be an update after the last committee that we had. We've got Eddie Spicer coming to do an update on the council housing retrofit works, which will be very interesting, a key milestone for them, we hope. They'll have lots to tell us. My colleague Alex, I think, will be coming on to do a run update on that project. If it's ready, but she's hoping she'll have something to say. And then she will also be coming to talk about climate risk and adaptation, which is something we've not had before, so that's scheduled. Any comments on that or anything else?
Councillor, well, first of all, Councillor Dr. Bhattacharya, then.
Okay, thank you. I have a question that is there any parameter or protocol to learn how are we performing nationally among all the local councils, climate-wise and also on the carbon footprint? So how are we performing? How do we know that where are we standing in the rank in nationally?
Yeah, can I ask officers?
Yeah, so I would say that I think as part of the work we'll be going to be doing in the coming year, reviewing our strategies, I think that will naturally be part of the work to start benchmarking. There isn't a very strong basis for national benchmarking in this field at the minute, and most recently we've kind of been beholden to the, I can't remember the name of the organisation, Climate Emergency UK, the benchmarking exercise, which we have discussed in previous meetings. And, you know, no matter what we think of it, it is there, it is useful. And actually, we are already taking on board some of their comments to feed into the plans for our statutory review. So we are giving it its due diligence, because actually, at the minute, it's kind of one of the strongest things we've got to hold on to that gives us any kind of benchmarking.
Yeah. Councillor Jeff Harvey?
Thank you, Chair. I think I did notice this on this morning, the forward plan, but looking at retrofit, I think we were planning to have a session on that at some point, and especially in relation to heritage buildings and how those can be made more energy efficient. And I think this is the right time to look at it, because we've had new guidance from Heritage England, and also had updates to the NPPF, National Planning Policy Framework, which makes the link between public benefit and including climate change mitigation within that public benefit more explicit. So there's some sort of policy sort of tailwinds nationally that would help us to revisit. We give a lot of guidance on the website to owners of heritage assets, but I think what we now need to see is, as we previously discussed in relation to the motion I brought, some actual sort of example case studies of places where we've perhaps used the discretion built into planning policy to actually make things like you know, double glazing fitted into listed buildings easier to accomplish without so many, as far as the residents are concerned, I suppose, hurdles being sort of put in the place of actual very, very good intentions in many cases. So I think we could have a session around that and look at all those issues.
So I think it was on the forward plan. So it's just to, because there's council retrofit in our own housing, and then there is homeowners within South Cambridgeshire where we have a large proportion of people with older housing, which often is in conservation areas, or it's listed, or it's heritage, and that proactive approach to, you know, being, bringing this into the balance. So I think it was on the forward plan, so it's just clarifying that.
It is on the forward plan. So obviously Eddie Spicer, when he comes, we'll be talking mainly about the work they've done on their council housing, although we can also give an update on action and energy as well, our own residential, you know, private sector, But your point about there is an upcoming workshop, as you say, and your point about the more historic homes, we definitely have captured that, and we'll be exploring that within the workshop. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Dr. Lisa Rudrup first.
Just got to
No,
declare.
Councillor Dr. Lisa Rudrup first.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. It's sort of a bit been covered. I was going to raise action on energy and sort of private initiatives for private homes, so thank you for including that.
No, simply, I've got to declare an interest in the sense that, of course, they've mentioned climate emergency, that my brother-in-law is one of the organisers of climate emergency, so I need to declare that interest.
Councillor Brian Milnes.
If everybody else is finished, I just wanted to...
I'll just say he hasn't used his influence very much, but there you go.
First of all, I wanted to apologise for missing this morning's workshop. Double hatting in a county council meeting prevents me getting there. But I'd like to apologise to everybody that was involved in organising that on the timeliness of it. Because on Sunday, Country File had a big section on biodiversity, and Look East followed that up yesterday also. So we're very much on message for that. So thank you. The other thing that we were talking about coordination, and again coming back from the county council, there's a new officer, Emma Stannard, who's the Green Infrastructure Team Manager, and she's been helping me with a local issue that I've mentioned before about the hedgerows in Sawston. And that's again good news in terms of getting some liaison between the local planning authority, highways, county highways department, to try and resolve some of those tensions that we've talked about before. So that's news.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brian. So we did miss you this morning because there was an issue exactly around the need for how we can improve even further this coordination that's necessary. So some of our officers were talking this morning about how they had met with county officers within the Green Investment team. So you've got the Green Investment Committee, but then you have this land and the sort of the corporate land side, and also with the farming tenancies. And an officer was saying actually it would be useful even if members encouraged that there to be even greater coordination around those, particularly for biodiversity net gain, around partial credits. So these are very much smaller units of credits that maybe county farms and the Green Investment Committee, it turned out they didn't know about the partial credit part. So we know about the bigger credits, which are on bigger developments, but not on these partial credits. So something I think that we can keep doing even better coordination between the two, from that planning to county council as a landowner and, you know, as your highways, the highway side too.
I think you'll have probably heard as well that the vacancies in the county farms is being given some preference to people that have got interest in biodiversity net gain projects. So that's continuing good news.
Yes, I think Dr. Martin Khan mentioned this morning. He was sort of saying, well, there are legal things around that land tenure, so can you actually ask them to be doing these things? It's actually part of the future framework for young farmers or young farmers coming into it. It's being put as a preference sort of filter, isn't it? Thank you. Yes.
Just a quick question. I'm asking this on behalf of Oakington and Westwick Parish Council. I was there last night. It's on the same theme. And they asked, how are we monitoring and measuring the biodiversity net gain and the future proofing of it? And where can they find the metrics for success?
So this is so timely, Orange Green, because at this morning's workshop, which is about, you know, biodiversity and nature recovery, we're talking about how can we, what are some of the barriers, or how can we accelerate our collaboration engagement locally around these issues? So there's a key question that people would like to be pointed to. So one thing we can do is signpost people to what it is. Your answer to them will be, I presume it came after this, that Monday was when this became law nationally. So biodiversity net gain now is law this week. So there's still some other regulations. Luckily, we've been preparing for this. over 18 months, so we're kind of ready for it. But it's going to be about what are those measurements, where can they find out about those measurements. We have got in our supplementary planning document, but also in other documents. So that might be a nice piece to go up on the Zero Communities and the Green Connections website. I'll hand it over to others.
Yeah, that's certainly something we can share, and particularly as it's quite timely. Yeah, very keen to share any information that we have on that. So yeah, do keep an eye out on the Zero Carbon Communities Facebook page, and sign up to the Zero Carbon Communities newsletter, where any information on that sort of would be shared from our part. Thanks.
And I think what we were talking about this morning is, so what was made law was 10% biodiversity net gain. Our aspiration, and in our emerging local plan, it's 20% that we're putting there. So that is huge. That is doubling. That is, very aspirational, and that will be challenging with developers and what they come back with viability. But that's what we're pushing for. So I think it's always good in our messaging to let communities know that the teeth will be at the 10%. Our local plan, we're pushing it to be at that 20% above national threshold. So, yeah. AOB? No? Well, thank you very much, and we'll bring this meeting to an end. Thank you very much. I do quite like some of the oral updates because it enables us just to know what's coming, whereas the formal reports make it mean that we can't hear anything until you can put something down on print. So this is very helpful at times, so thank you very much, because it means you've got to put time into it anyway. But that was very useful. Thank you. Thank you, members.